Hello and welcome to this episode of Akrinos Access. I'm your host, Eric Matei, joined today by the eyewear image expert, Wendy Buchanan, for part two of a three-part series we're doing here on Akrinos Access that's all about optimizing and really maximizing the potential of the optical in your independent practice. So in episode one, we're exploring this whole concept of, well, would you buy from you? And Wendy helps us set the stage for, understanding exactly where are we now in the world of optical and where are the opportunities for independents to really thrive and shine and grow their business. Now, here in episode two, we're going to build on that. And we're calling this episode Reframe Your Game. So in this one, Wendy's going to build again on some of the stats she shared with us in episode one and really provide some pearls that you can go and implement in your practice to really get your business on a radical growth trajectory, no matter where you are in that practice life cycle. So, Wendy, welcome back to Akrinos Access. It's nice to see you.
Great to be back. Great to be back. And I'm excited for this. I love the whole inventory, reframe your game. It's kind of like reframe your game, reframe mind. It all works together. And I love diving into inventory and then how that relates to fashion and style.
Well, on that note, look, let's jump right into it. If we are talking about reframing your game in the optical, I think first we need to kind of set the stage with understanding, providing a snapshot of what, some of these modern consumer behavior trends in optical, but particularly what are people looking for in optical?
I think consumers are more and more fashion savvy. They have the advantage of everything that's happening online, everything that's happening in social, and they see all of the latest trends or the newest designs. And that's coming from a lot of our suppliers too. They all have their own Instagram channels. So the consumer knows the availability of product that's out there, which is great if you want to go independent because the independent designers are more prevalent now on social, where it used to be, I don't know who they are if they're not a recognized brand per se. And one of the big things I hear from business owners in optical is how do we start to capture the millennials and how do we start to capture the Gen Z? And millennials are looking to buy eyewear that makes them feel good. It's a feeling, but they're also looking for experiences. And if we can provide them with those two things, they're more likely to stay and buy with us. Gen Z might take a little bit more of a relationship building to get them offline because they do everything online and everything is instant gratification. So how do we engage them to be interested when they're in the store? Because they have to get into your clinics to get the eye exam. How can what's on the boards keep them in your optical? Because they do like that instant gratification. So if we can accomplish that for them, they'll stay. But what they don't know, and this is for every generation, and what you do, Eric, before I even get into that, what you do with your geospatial analysis is brilliant because it breaks down by generation who the market is for your independent practices. And once we know that, when we take the combination of who's coming into the clinic, then we start to match that frame inventory to those different generations so that we can take that capture rate from 50 to 70 or to 80% too. But what all consumers, not all, I guess the majority of them, is they don't know how to translate all the trends and all the styles because they're overloaded and inundated with fashion trends on social platforms, but they don't know how to match the trends to their individual style. And that's where, as independents, we truly can be different and create experiences that help them get the trend that works best for them. And that comes with your inventory.
Yeah, really fascinating to unpack some of that, Wendy. When we are talking about what are consumers looking for, because I noticed nowhere in your thoughts there was it pricing, promotion, 2-for-1 deals, discounts, product bundling. I mean, certainly that will impact segments of that patient population. But when it ties back to what are these big things that most optical consumers are looking for, they're about the feeling. How does it make them feel when they place that eyewear on their face? They're about the experience that they have, that buyer journey interacting with your team. Another thing you hit also that is really, really powerful is the relationship. And thinking back to our first episode, which to our viewers out there, if this is episode 2 of a 3-part series we're doing with the eyewear image expert, Wendy Buchanan. And in episode 1, Wendy opened it up by talking about the competitive advantage that independents have simply in the patient being in their office, in their chair. So when we're talking about the relationship piece, brick and mortar private practice, patients are coming in for care. Why? Because many patients agree and realize that the quality of care you're going to get in the independent is higher. So now let's bolster that relationship and bring it into the optical. So really powerful ways to kind of open this up. Again, reflecting on what are consumers looking for in that optical purchasing experience. So now let's start to maybe now jump into the significance of optical selection. And this, I know, something, Wendy, is something that many businesses struggle with. I mean, heck, independents and the big boxes that independents are in competition with, everyone struggles with trying to figure out what is that right product mix. So why don't you speak a little bit of the significance of optical selection in reflecting and presenting what consumers are looking for?
The biggest, when we talked in the very first episode about why are they walking out, why is the capture rate at 50% or really good at 60, it's that we didn't wow them. But the second piece of that is what I like to call their spec style. And spec style is categories, if we want to call it that, that are all encompassing. They're about how how they like to dress, what's their strength in business, how do they walk, how do they talk, uh, what do they value, what do they value in life, and how does that translate to eyewear. And one of the biggest things I see in clinics is there's 5 spec styles. Most eye care professionals are 2 of those 5 spec styles. And so their boards might be filled with product that speaks to their spec style because it's human nature for us to buy what we love. Love that product. I'm going to bring that product in. I love that. But we have to think about what are all the other frame lines products that the other 60% would like to buy. And when we compare that to the capture rate, so if they're carrying 3 out of the 5 spec styles and their capture rate's at 50, 60%, that makes sense. Maybe their boards were missing that 40% of inventory that we can invest in, that we can take money from the 60, put it over here in the 40, and create a more diverse frame selection when it comes to materials, shapes, colors. And oftentimes the reason it's not there is that they just don't sell it. They think, oh my God, who would ever wear this? It's like, I'm never going to be able to sell this because who would wear this? Well, that's a specific spec style that would wear that. And when you know who that is, now you know how to sell it. So now you're more confident investing in that product line. And so I would say, look at your capture rate and what is it? and then look at your frame boards. And if there's a lot of black and crystal and tortoise and a light gold metal, you're catering to 3 of the 5 spec styles and you're missing that 40%. And is there duplicates? Is there beautiful black frames from one supplier that look an awful lot like the beautiful black frames from another supplier? Is there that overlap where it all starts to look the same? Because if we go back to what's that wow, that 6 seconds, 20-second first impression, if all they're seeing are black and crystal and tortoise shell, they might already be formulating their exit strategy, right? It's like, I
Formulate an
got
exit
my
strategy,
prescription.
how to leave your optical and walk.
Yeah, I get out of here fast because I don't see anything out there that I like. And that
Yeah.
might be the 40%. So we don't even have a chance to engage them because they've already made their decision by looking at what the product looks like. And I know a lot of people like to keep their product in drawers, which is great because then it's maybe more minimal, but make sure what's on display speaks to all the different styles so that you have the opportunity to engage them and then make your offer, and make your offer not just for one pair, but for 2 or 3, because everyone is 2 or 3 spec style combinations. They're never just one. So that helps you make the offer too. But you have to have product to sell 2 or 3 pairs.
Yeah. That's really interesting, Wendy, because that is in stark contrast to a lot of the thinking out there with optical selection, right? Like a lot of the thinking out there with optical selection is price point driven, right? Okay, we want to have some nice selection at all of our different price points. I think also a lot of the thinking in optical selection is, I'll have my frame rep come in and tell me what they think I should put on the board, right? But meanwhile, it's overlooking, and this is really powerful. I know this is a concept that you have developed, right? I mean, in the work you do with Be Spectacular and working with practices on this, it's all around reframing the game and getting away from, okay, we need to have, work this price grid or just accept whatever that rep's going to come in and want to take off and put on your board. And not realizing also that they may be doing a net +10 that's just going to leave you overstocked with stuff, right? But really tying it back to the significance of optical selection for the modern practice rests in, are we representing the 5 different image styles, right? And when we dig back and look at how you had kind of opened this episode, Wendy, was sharing what are people looking for? People are looking for stuff that makes them feel the way they want to feel. They are looking for that experience across that buying journey. And then they're looking for the relationship in working with those retailers they're working with. So really, really fascinating stuff. If we could here, maybe briefly speak to the 5 different spec styles. And folks, if our viewers out there, if you'd like to learn more, a deeper dive in this, definitely head on over to bespectacular.com and you can learn a whole lot more. But Wendy, if you could maybe speak to, because I know this is a concept that is foreign to so many folks out there. Again, the status quo is tied back to what vision plans are in my market and what price points do I have represented. That's not what people are looking for. So why don't you speak to those 5 spec styles?
Okay, so let's talk about the 2 spec styles that most eye care professionals, and I would say most optometrists, fall into these 2. That's the subtle sophisticate and the natural. And the subtle sophisticate, when you hear about who they are, it makes sense that they're care professionals because this is your strength. This is what you value. This is where you shine. It's your superpower. And the subtle sophisticate is highly detailed. They like structure and order to their day. The natural is more laid back. Like Eric, you're that laid back, easygoing, builds relationships quickly. There's no pretense. They like to have more of a natural, easygoing vibe. And this is what I love about you, and this is what makes eye care professionals great. So it makes sense that they're going to those two spec styles, but everybody probably has a bit of an overlap of third. But that's why the frame boards tend to cater to those two spec styles because that's who they are. The third one is elegant. Elegant charmer is that they want everything a little more luxurious. They want that experience. They give that experience. They exude this love where you almost want to hug them when they walk in, or if they're in eye care, and hugging might not be part of our patient journey, but it's part of what they value, and part of what they find important is that warmth, that engagement, us being human to them. Like, we don't have to be perfect, we just have to be human. We have to be responsible if we're not perfect, and own up to that, but that makes us relatable. The next one is inspired artist, where they don't want rules, they don't want what's on trend. They create looks that mix and match that no one can duplicate, and that's what makes them so awesome. And that's one that typically will walk out the door. So we have to cater to them. They're also one of the biggest spenders. And the last one that's also a big spender is the daring dramatic. And the daring dramatic, they can be intimidating. They can plow over your team if you don't know how to work them. But when you know what they value and you can be concise and confident and make your offer, they've already got their credit card out and they're ready to go. And they're often overlooked because of that intimidation factor. It's like, they might label them as difficult. Oh, here comes our difficult patient. But if you understand who they are and serve them with the values that they want and present the frames, they're the ones that'll buy $3,000-$4,000 in 35 minutes. Like, they're worth
Yeah.
the conversation. So those are the 5 spec styles, very high level, obviously. But even to this day, everything I do plays back to what's the spec style, and that changes how I engage them, the conversations that I have with them, and the experiences that I create, because I know so well what their spec style is and how to cater to that, so that we can serve at the highest level for that individual. So we're not just a cookie cutter, okay, do this, ask them about their hobbies, ask them what they do on the weekend. No, let's go even deeper and see what they value, what their wardrobe, because fashion sells. People will buy product because it looks great on them and it makes them feel amazing.
Absolutely. And that is so wildly insightful, Wendy, right? I mean, once again, recognizing that the modern optical
Mhm.
consumer is not looking for price. They're not looking for bundles. I mean, sure, look, price is going to play a role, and there are going to be a lot of amazing ways to bundle a variety of aspects of the practice, right? But for all intents and purposes, optical consumers are not shopping, going into an independent optical, looking for a 2-for-1 deal, or looking for necessarily the stuff that they could go right down the street and find on the wall of the big box retailer.
Yeah.
No, the modern
Yeah.
optical consumer is looking for stuff that makes them feel a certain way. It's looking for them to experience life feeling that way with that
Mhm.
eyewear, and they're looking for that relationship, right? In working with their retailers, and then to
Mhm.
shift that into optical selection, right? So if we understand what the consumer is looking for, what do we put on our boards? And wow, Wendy, and again, to our viewers out there, that is a very high level that Wendy provided of the 5 spec styles. Again, the subtle sophisticate, the natural, the elegant charmer, the inspired artist, and that daring. I can't even read my own handwriting there. What is it?
Daring dramatic.
The daring dramatic. Yes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
as it were, well, look, I mean, Wendy, it's in our collaborations we do with Akrinos and Be
Mhm.
Spectacular, and having working with you in collaboration with our cold starts to do what? Optimize that optical offering for their brand new optical. And I know when you get into doing the work with our clients, it's not about price point. It's not about this or that. I mean, trust me, and from working with us, we always provide you with a really clear budget, some really good analytics to base it on.
Yeah.
But the magic then comes in taking that market research that we do, and then you applying the spec style mastery to understanding that market. And now we've got the recipe to achieve things in an independent optical that's really next level.
Well, and depending what your breakdown is on practices when it comes to those generational, who's coming in, if price is important to a certain generation, then we still can create that frame board, a segment of that frame board that speaks to all 5 spec styles at that price point so that they can
Love it.
stay.
Yes.
And when you understand it, the other cool thing is, we don't want to spend 35, 45 minutes with someone who's going to be a low revenue sale. But when you know this, you know how to engage, you have the confidence to present, streamline it, and close in, I always say it's 6 frames in 6 minutes and close when it's low value, because you don't need to spend 45 minutes to close a low end sale. Because if you know who they are, speak to their value systems, speak to who they are, and be confident in your selection and show them why it works. Create that same feeling in 6 minutes.
Wow. I feel like you just opened the can of worms for not only our 3rd episode, which is going to be coming up here,
But
but
you
also
tell I
for
love styling eyewear. It's like, if put me in front of people that style eyewear, and I love the creativity that comes when we allow the team to really show up authentically and put their spin on it. And I think it's easy too. It's more comfortable for the team just to be who they are and show up the way they are, but have a system or a structure to be able to engage each client as an individual and not just as mass market, because they can get that out in the box stores. They don't need it from independents.
Yeah. Fascinating. Before we wrap up this episode, I think a fitting close of this episode, Wendy, maybe for you to just share some best practices, right? So for our listeners out there that are at any stage of their practice life cycle, right? Maybe they're thinking about that cold start. Maybe they're already in their established practice looking to maximize their earnings potential, or maybe they are eyeing their exit from the business. Why don't you maybe share a couple of pearls and how folks can perhaps be proactive in those first steps to reframe the game in their optical?
Well, and cold start, and I know we always have a budget when we're starting with cold starts, and you figured out all the numbers, but I always believe you start lean. Start lean as a cold start with your inventory, because then that gives you the flexibility to pivot and to shift quickly. And in the first 6 months, what we thought on paper was perfect, there might be some little nuances we need to shift, or we might be attracting a higher end clientele, or we might find that we have more Gen Z that are budget conscious, whatever the dynamics of that individual practice. But if we start lean, we have all the flexibility to move we've got the cash flow to make those changes happen really quickly. Where when you're established, again, it's that comfort zone. So really take a look at what do your boards look like, because if you're replenishing your board where you sell it and it automatically gets replaced in 2 days and it goes back into that spot, your team might be getting just a little bored with looking at your boards, and now maybe they don't get excited about the product, which comes across in the presentation of the product. If they're not excited, it's like, oh yeah, I've sold that frame 5 times this week. I don't even want to show it again. But if you've got new coming in constantly, it keeps everybody excited and energized. Your patient sees something different when they come in for that checkup. Your team sees something different that they're putting out on the boards that week. So it keeps that energy high. And again, your numbers might be awesome and your target, you might be like blowing your targets, but what are you leaving on the table? Could I have closed one more sale? Would they have bought 3 pairs if I'd at least presented the offer? And approaching transition, I think it's the same thing. It's like really present those boards so that they are dynamic. So that whoever is looking at buying your practice is like, wow, this is different. This has value because of the optical. And let's not kid ourselves. The optical is a huge or can be a huge revenue generating part of the business when it's done right and always better. I've I've had my own company 27 years where I work with clients, and every week I am learning and getting better, or I'm consciously looking at a client and asking a different question. And it's because I just stay always I'm always uncomfortable. I'm never quite comfortable. I don't know if that's good for blood pressure and health, but I'm always like, "Oh, that client scares me a bit." But then I want to win them over. Then it's a challenge. Then it's like, "Ah, I know who they are. They're the daring dramatic, and I know how to talk to them, and I know what to present to them." And as soon as we recognize who they are, they deflate. Like I've had daring dramatics actually at the end go, "Oh, you really understood who I am, and I appreciate that." Right?
Yeah.
It's like that's the relationship that we build where it's not about us. It don't worry, we can't take things personally. If we've got the theory in our mind that we can understand people better, then we take our eyes off ourselves and put all of our energy and our focus on our patients or who become our clients.
Yeah. Wendy, wow, what a conversation here, right? Again, episode 2
Yeah.
of 3, y'all. We're doing with the eyewear image expert, Wendy Buchanan. This is all about reframing your game, right? Where Wendy shared with us what the modern optical consumer is looking for and how the independent optical can really absolutely capitalize on that competitive advantage by adopting this modern style centric approach and adopting those 5 spec styles into the optical strategy. So stay tuned for episode 3, where we are going to jump specifically into this whole world of how to compete with online and big box retailers. But if you would like to reach out to Wendy between now and next episode, Wendy, they can visit bspectacular.com and can reach out to you directly. What, shoot an email at wendy@bspectacular.com.
Awesome. Yeah. That'd be great. Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, viewers, stay tuned for our 3rd and final episode of Akrinos Access with Wendy Buchanan coming right your way. And hey, if you're looking for ways to maximize potentially your practice, head over to akrinos.com and check out all the cool solutions and advisory that Akrinos brings to help you start, scale, and sell that modern practice. Wendy, look forward to seeing you in episode 3.
See you there.